Hello, I'm Roy Richardson, and this is the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. Welcome to this edition of the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Roy Richardson, together with my co-host, Sean Murphy. The Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast is brought to you by Aurora Infotech, a cybersecurity firm helping businesses stay secure in today's digital world. Our guest today, folks, is someone who's built and scaled disruptive technologies, led a successful business exit, and now invests in companies and real estate with a sharp eye for strategy and tax efficiency. He's the founder of QuantumFlo and now serves as managing partner at QuantumFly Capital Group. He's a former chairman of GrowFL, a passionate advocate for CEO education, and a mentor to emerging leaders. And when he's not building businesses, he's flying planes, spending time with his family, and developing high-yield investment strategies. Please join us in welcoming David Carrier, a visionary entrepreneur with a story that's as aspiring as it is instructive. And to kick things off, I want to hand this over to Sean. Sean has known David for many years and brings a unique perspective to today's conversation. Sean?
Well, thanks, Roy. Good afternoon, fellas. Great to be with you both. I've had the privilege of knowing Dave for about 6 years now, and we got to know each other through GrowFL. But since then, we've formed a personal friendship. Like myself, his daughter has adoptive kids. And so we bonded with each other, not only on the business side, but on the personal side as well. And I've gotten to know his wife, Debbie, who's from my neck of the woods, from the Okeechobee, Arcadia area. And as much as I love the inner city, I'm also a huge fan of the rural part of our great state. And then don't talk about his son, Brad, who, when we're on our weekly calls, it's just listening to the two of them go back and forth and banter, and him talking about his Raleigh Fingers mustache. It's just very comical. But back to Dave and I met at GrowFL. Like I said, he's the former chair. He has an incredible passion for second stage companies, which is where I've spent 30 years and US Roy. And so I just love the fact that he has passion for it. And I just wanted to take one quick minute to just shout out GrowFL before we get into Dave's story, because a lot of folks don't know about GrowFL, but 16, 17 years ago, when Tom O'Neill and the governor of the great state of Florida came up with this concept of helping second stage and bringing resources to the companies to help scale them up and grow, I have been a huge fan of it. All of the years, it's run by an incredible woman, Tammy Sweet. She's been there since the inception, and I just love what they do and what they stand for. And I cannot wait for past two guests that we've had on. I can't wait for the world to know about Dave and his accomplishments and what he's done for our community. So, Dave, it's great to have you.
Wow, how do I follow that up, Sean? I don't know. I can assure you, my son would not have any idea about your reference to Raleigh Fingers, but
well, he's gonna knowing Brad, he's gonna Google it and he'll understand, right? Dave, let's dive in a little bit and get to know you a little bit better, and I know you, but let's let the world get to know you better. You've traveled quite a bit, and I think the last time we were at an event, you pulled out your phone and you were showing me all your aviation stuff. It's amazing. But where was the one place that really shifted your thoughts about life or business?
that is an easy question to answer. In fact, it's probably one of the easiest ones on this list. When I started QuantumFlo in 2007, and one of the things that really defined who we were as a company is our reach. We marketed through independent representatives all over the world, really. And we had a really dynamite footprint, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, North, Central, South America, and all the way out to the Pacific Islands. And so every year, somebody had to volunteer to go to the energy show in Hawaii. And I was the guy. Usually we would turn that show, which was about a 2 or 3 day show, good show for us, into about a 10 or 12 day trip. And one of those trips we happened to we spent 3 or 4 days in Oahu, and then we took a little side trip, spent a week in Maui. And this was, of course, before the downtown Lahaina burned down. And I can truly say that I think that place is heaven on earth. It is an amazing place. But more important than the area is the attitude, right? So when you're kind of fight all day and you're trying to balance work and life, and this is going to be a theme today. because I'm going to go back to this a few times. It's real important for business owners to take the time to reflect, because when you're in the fight, sometimes you don't make good decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember going to Maui. I brought a couple of books with me. I did some great reading out there on the lanai with my flip flops up on the rail, and the whales jumping in the Maui Channel out there. It was just an unbelievable place, and it's amazing how your body just responds to input when it's relaxed. So Maui's my place.
Yeah.
Amazing indeed. When you think on, so busy with our day-to-day hustle that we sometimes, forget about the finer things of life, right? And just disconnecting, being able to unplug and go to, exotic location or someplace, maybe just, town over and feet up. And just, one thing with the islands, whether it's in the Caribbean or the Pacific, people really, feel very welcome, right?
Oh,
So,
absolutely. And the other probably just as important as that, Roy, is the fact that when you're in Maui, you're 6 hours behind
yeah,
this time zone.
Right.
So really, even if you wanted to reconnect, it's very difficult to do unless you do it first thing in the morning. So if you were to connect first thing in the morning, you have the rest of the day to just sort of reflect and absorb. And really, again, I can't say it enough. Powering down is so critically important to
Right.
business owners, particularly as they begin to grow and the business starts to get a little out of control. You
yeah,
get the tiger by the tail.
Right.
yeah.
To do that.
Yeah, very true and well said. And so let me ask you here, David, being a pilot myself, an aviator to another, what inspired you to pursue your pilot's license at 50? I read that in your fun fact. So,
Well, I started the business in 2007, but I've been traveling since about 1994 when I started as a regional manager for a company that we'll probably talk about here in a minute. But um, at that time, I flew a lot. I flew U.S. Airways. I was what's called U.S. Airways Chairman's Preferred.
oh, yeah.
1% of their traveling, and that was a great airline. I wish they were still around, but nevertheless, I did a lot of traveling and spent a lot of time looking out the side of the airplane.
Right.
And I always wondered what it was like to look out the front of the airplane. And when I actually, about the time I turned 50, I'm 61 now, but when I turned 50, I decided, you know what? Not only do I have a little bit of time on my hands, I want to learn to fly, because when I travel in the state of Florida, it takes me 4 hours to get to the airport, get off the plane, and get
Right.
to Miami, for example. And when I
Right.
learned to fly, I could make that trip in 45 minutes in my airplane.
Yeah.
It was, I call it my time machine, because it literally, I could spend a day making engineering calls in Miami and be home for dinner.
Yeah.
Have to worry about the
Yes.
drive. And to be honest with you, when I'm flying, I'm sure it's the same with you. It's zen. I love,
yeah.
all you're thinking about is not dying.
Yeah.
Keep the plane in the air, listen for your call on the radio. But no, it's, to me, it's a really relaxing.
Yeah, it is.
I get very relaxed when I'm flying.
It is. And speaking about 4-hour journeys, you could spend 4 hours on I-4 just trying to get to Tampa. So,
Right.
about going to Miami.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't fly much anymore because I don't have the need to. But when I did have the plane and I was flying regularly for the business, if it was in the Southeast, that's how I was getting there.
Right.
Nice. Well, that's, agree with you. One of the things I enjoyed most is, going on that vacation, right? You're disconnecting there, whether you have, a lot of times I flew by myself, and I said, listening
All
in for
focus.
right, all
Right,
focus,
right, right.
listening for
Yeah.
your call sign, but it enables you to also, in on some things that, without that external noise, so to say. So,
Right. Listen, now that we warmed up, run the clock back, explore Dave's journey a little bit. We're going to go back to the 70s in Tampa. Grew up in the family the mechanical trades business. That shaped the way we lead today, Dave.
Oh, I think it's dramatic. As far back as I can remember, even going back prior to 1977, when I landed in Florida, my father worked for a plumbing wholesale house in Worcester, Massachusetts. And one day, my mother decided we were moving to Florida, and of course, there was nothing he could say about it. It was right, and we moved down here. He had no job, but he ended up getting a position in the same type of business as a plumbing wholesale And that sort of evolved into becoming what's called an independent representative. So a manufacturer's representative. So eventually he became he moved from the plumbing wholesale trade to the manufacturer's representation trade, which these are the people that sold to plumbing wholesalers, if you want to understand it that way. And it's actually the people who represented my product at QuantumFlo when I
And
started the
QuantumFlo.
company. We have these independent reps. So I mean, I grew up. This is why I ended up where I'm at. Certainly wasn't planned that way. I just went to work for my dad while I was going to college because he just needed the help,
All right.
and I just didn't escape the gravity. Well, you ended up sticking around, but
Very cool.
my dad was amazing. I lost him in 1998 at only age 58, so I've outlived
Oh,
my
wow.
dad
Yeah. Wow.
up now.
Yeah.
It was a shock, but just I know that I missed a lot, but because I was around him and we were working together for so long, I feel like that benefited me a lot in what I would eventually do in the future. Yeah, so I look at myself now as sort of a Florida native. I've been here since I was 13. So, fan and all nine yards. I
Uh,
still
uh,
cheer for the Patriots, but
Another,
if it's between the Patriots and the Bucks, I'm gonna choose the Bucks.
um, no, without a shadow of a doubt that friend and your wife, Debbie, would not allow you to speak those words about being a Florida native. Because, like you, I'm married to a native. And I said, been here since I was 14. Doesn't that qualify? No.
No,
No.
Technically, she's not a native. She was born in Houston, so
Okay, I thought she was a
but
native. I
she
thought.
moved here as 2 weeks old. So
Okay, look, so yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. That's all that is. You just mad because you and I can't claim
just
nativeship. But
throw a
listen,
broomstick in your spokes.
right, let's go to Armstrong Pumps and give us some of the lessons that you learned from that chapter that still guides you today.
This is interesting how this came about. So Armstrong was a manufacturer, right? Like QuantumFlo would become.
Right?
And I was working. I opened an office in Central Florida in 1989 for my family's company of independent reps. And my specialty was with a company that made plumbing pressure booster systems. So think anywhere you have to lift or pressurize water. Think of a high-rise building, right? How do you get the water to the top floor? You got to
Yeah.
pressurize it. So
Mhm.
these are the type of devices we specialized in as an independent rep with my parents. They came to me and gave me a really great offer to join the team. I was in my early 30s. I was probably younger than my son is now. It was a way to sort of start on my own, right?
All right.
And not be under mom and dad because my mother worked in the business as well. I kind of had an opportunity to strike out on my own. My dad was 100% in favor. He goes, look, I could obviously use you here, but he is gracious enough to allow me to leave. And it was really one of the best things that ever happened to me because it was sort of like getting thrown into the fire. I had to learn to become not just an independent representative and a sales guy in the field. I had to now learn to manage a team of salespeople.
Right.
And so it, along with a lot of the other stories that we certainly don't have time to go through on this podcast, is what sort of shaped me as an individual. And that always impacted me is we're not sort of the essence of all these stories that shaped us.
Right.
And in my case, I went out there without a clue in the world, be a manager of people. And I made a lot of stupid mistakes. And you know what? That's necessary. That's the best way to learn because you never forget them when you make the mistake. And so they taught me to manage a group and eventually gave me the confidence to kind of on from there. I heard the Peter principle.
Yes.
Yep.
You advance to the point where you can no longer advance any further. Now, that's what happened to me at Armstrong. I was actually voted Salesman of the Year my first year there by my peers. Huge because I was the youngest salesman in the group, and these guys all had years experience. But I learned a lot from these guys. It was really good to get out there and really just hone my craft, if you will,
Right.
and make a lot of stupid mistakes doing it. But it was a great way to learn. So yeah, I have a lot of great memories of that first management position.
And I'm assuming that that came with a world and being many different
Expensive.
places, right? Yeah.
Of course, the downfall, the negative in that is it did cost me my first marriage. I think a lot of that had to do with being young and stupid and realizing that some things that are more important.
Mm.
Got lucky, right? So I met a wonderful woman years ago, and Debbie, and we have a great relationship, and my kids love her. So there's kind of worked out the way it did, but you have to be careful. You know,
Yeah.
you get out there and you start getting a little full of yourself and thinking that you can sort of the world in a day. You
Right.
can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's true. True. And so from those early lessons, I built a career of innovation and resilience. Let's unpack some of these chapters here and share bit more your story. And it's about Delta P systems and how that experience prepared you for launching QuantumFlo.
So I guess I should have known better. That's how I'm going to start this story. Went out there and I learned a lot of great things with Armstrong. And then I actually took on another position between that and Delta P and eventually a global sales manager. So I was traveling globally up until 9/11. And on 9/11, I was home with my young son, Brad, at about 6 or 7 years old. And he was home from school sick. Thankfully, I was there with him when things unfolded on TV, and it kind of changed my attitude.
Mhm.
I realized then and there, wait a minute, I could have been on that plane. I could have been
Yeah.
traveling when this
Right.
happened. A
Right.
lot of things could have gone wrong. So it did really kind of me. And so as a result of that, it sort of pushed me into this business. This gentleman was starting in Ormond Beach, and he was a former customer of mine, a contractor. And he decided that he wanted to start building these plumbing machines, these pressure booster systems I was telling you,
Yeah.
but he really didn't know how to build a business. And I had many years now
Mhm.
in management building a business and actually succeeding and sales and breaking sales. So I told him that join you on one condition. First of all, he couldn't afford me. I was a global
Huh.
sales manager. He couldn't afford me in a million years. I took a pay cut and I
Wow.
lived off savings. And the reason I did that is because I was going to be paid partially in income and sweat equity in the form
Yep.
of stock in the business. So got later we were 9 million, I think, in sales, and I had developed all the sales programs. In fact, I had developed everything that became that business, and discovered at that time my business partner didn't know much about business, and was wasting. He didn't manage money, didn't just a lot of different things. And so I, one day, and I said, "Look, it's going to be one, either you or me. One of us has to go."
Mm.
And he goes, "Well, I'm older than you." He was about 10 years older. He says, "So you may as well buy me out." I said, "Perfect. Give me a number." He gave me a number. And I put a business plan together, went to several banks. The very first bank that I went to was BB&T. BB&T said, "This is the best deal. This is an easily financeable deal. We will pay him and we will kick him out the door." So, long story short, that happened. We got, we were right along. We were 2 weeks from the moment that we were supposed to close on this financing deal, and he would be out of my life forever, and I would own the business free and clear. He
Mm.
reneged. And the way he reneged wasn't the way normal people.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
He decided that, hey, if I change the locks on the door and he can't get in, maybe he
Oh
won't come
man.
back.
Wow.
So, long
Uh,
story
uh,
short, that
uh, uh.
I called the reluctant entrepreneur, right? I left,
Well.
went down the road to an attorney that was recommended to me, and I gave through the whole story about how I built this company. And he goes, "Well," he says, "Do you want me to start the paperwork?" I said, "What are you talking about? I just told you a story." He goes, "Well," he says, "it sounds to me like that business succeeded because of you. Give yourself the credit for it. What do you want the new company to be called?" And I met some really, really good people there. I'll keep that till the next to a question down the way. Um, I started Quantum Flow that way because I
Very
had
cool.
no other choice. I had ideas. When I left, we used none of their ideas. In fact, I gave my attorney my disk from my computer. He let me keep the computer. I gave him my disk drive. And at my attorney's recommendation, I'm glad I did that, because 6 months later, they came back to try to sue us to shut us down.
All right.
And then the rest is history.
History. That's right.
I was born in 2007.
And that was in
February
07.
2000.
Yeah.
Yeah, this all happened, by the way, right before Christmas 2006.
So Dave, you're kind of a nerd. You're talking about making boosters and water flow systems and things like that. That's kind of cool.
When it comes to that stuff, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
When I left the business, I was probably the most person in the country when it came to that stuff.
Not now. I mean, a question earlier, like the couple of the books you read, a couple of the people the books are about. I can see why you chose those books, and the people, because they kind of are like yourself. So anyway, Roy, you have about the boost system?
Yeah. So first of all, Dave, it's amazing how when one door shuts, the other one
That's right.
opens, and sometimes it's shutting that door or having that door shut on
Shut.
you to
Couple of times.
right.
That's right. That's right.
Amazing. So you started QuantumFlo and developed the booster operating system software. Tell us about it and the biggest technical challenge you face while doing so.
Yeah. So perfect segue into this. So as I mentioned, I left the hard drive with all our ideas with my attorney, because when at QuantumFlo, I knew there was a need for a product that really leveraged technology. We're talking 2007.
Right.
I think
Right.
the iPhone was even available yet.
No.
So you saw this preponderance of technology. Well, in the industrial space, this is where we started seeing, touch screen interfaces and different types of computing solutions that were much, much faster and just meager relays and days and things like that. And I knew where I wanted, and this is an important topic. So let me just sidebar for a quick minute.
Yeah.
People that come to me, they go, well, how did you come up with that? I mean, where did you get this idea? And the best example I can give is start with the end in mind. Where
Right.
do you want to be? When you understand where you want to go to, it's a lot easier to fill in the blanks from start to finish. If you know where you're going to finish, it's easy to backfill into the starting of and development of that.
True.
And I knew I wanted something that was, the products that were on the market were something called constant speed systems. In other words, when the pressure dropped, they just turned on a motor that was running across the line, meaning full speed, and it pressurized the building and then it shut off. And when there was another demand, they'd do the same thing. It was on off. There was no in between.
Right.
As energy started getting more expensive, around for years and years, something called variable frequency drives that would take and change the actual speed of a motor, like you change the light on a wall with a rheostat. They could be automatically controlled to speed up or speed down according to the demand in the system. And we knew we wanted to be the leader in variable speed pressure boosting technology. But we would be the leader that was very recognizable from everybody else. So that was number one. We saw the value as you reduce the speed, by the way, of a pump or fan, your energy is reduced by the cube of the
Right.
speed reduction.
Right.
So if you're running at only half speed on a pump or fan, it actually is using 12% total power. Now, most of the time these things are operating, they're operating at those low speeds anyway. So instead of turning on at full power, these things are just kind of ramping up and down throughout the day.
Right.
So energy-wise, they were extremely energy efficient.
Yeah.
Many cases, you could go back and show a payback for the equipment if you did your sales program right.
Right.
Say,
Got it.
okay, instead of selling you this piece of equipment, how'd you like it for free? And now you've got their attention, right? Well, here's how
Right.
you're going to do it. You're not going to put in a constant speed. You're going to put in a variable speed. So that was step number one. Step number two is we had to have a software package that detected these minute changes in the building and responded accordingly. That was number one. Number two, it had to know when there was no more flow in the system so it could shut off.
Mhm.
Because how do you save the most amount of energy? You don't run the motor.
Right.
So what we were able to do was over time. By the way, this took 13 years, from 2007, to 2018 or
20.
whatever it was.
So having said that, the flow of the technology took that long to figure out, or was it the fact that you got it at the system inside of clients took that
Yeah.
long?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, we actually was sort of nipping at the heels of the tech. So when we started doing this, there was really no, I call it artificial intelligence for pumps. Everybody's pumps, everybody's products out there, even the big guys, were very rudimentary. They were
Mm,
it was a mature market, right? It was machines and relays and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And our tagline, we weren't a pump manufacturer or we weren't a systems manufacturer. We're a technology company that just happened to build pump systems, right? So we
that is
I like
amazing.
everything
that.
was
I like
focused
that.
on the
Right,
tech,
right, right. Again,
and we were always
again,
nipping at the heels of the tech, right?
right.
So as the software got better, as the computers got stronger, our technology evolved with it. So yeah, that's why it took that length of time,
Right.
Sean, to sort of evolve with the evolving systems that were there.
My previous company, Dave, was in telecom, and so we supported a lot of critical infrastructure companies, utility companies, SCADA systems, and you're right. It was a lot of it was relay based, on or off. No
Right.
no
Yeah.
ability to do any type of variable or ramp up as demand was needed, etc. So kudos, Sean.
Again, I'm still,
As I was walking out the door, just to yield
as you were walking.
went from SCADA to IP based.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge, someone who's been in that market, there's a huge exponential leap in technology.
Makes sense. And all of the years I've known you, and we've had conversations about a lot of this stuff, it makes sense why you chose a couple of the people, the books that you've read and who've kind of helped you grow the business and who you kind of model me the right word, but you've taken pieces away from them to help you grow your business. So anyway, with that
Let
being
me
said,
just make one before we move on. Let me make one more
okay,
point because this is super important to viewers. We were not the big guy on campus. We were the tiny little bug,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
In Sanford, Florida, that was sort of trying to change the world. When it comes to tech and when it comes to innovation, innovation is the great equalizer.
the
You can
great,
take
that's
the
right,
smallest, most insignificant
right,
business. And in our case, we were acquired
right,
by, are you ready for this? A 150-year-old multi-billion-dollar German company. So, we make of a mark, even though we
right.
were a very small position for them.
Smart
We
jerks.
can, for those that are thinking, it's insurmountable,
Right.
it's absolutely not.
A smart German company, I was going to say, because my former business partner always, he has saying, and he worked for Compact Computers for many years, and in Europe, and was instrumental in putting the Digital Equipment Corporation and Compact merger together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and saying, he's like, the companies that fail to innovate, when they reach their plateau and they become comfortable, are the ones that actually fall behind. And
Yes.
small is good, man. I can tell you from experience. I mean, Mike started my telecom company. We were the last to market, and the banks actually turned us down and said we put our own money in, and 10 years later, with 60% market share, because being small, you can pivot very quickly.
That's right.
These bigger companies are so set in their ways. By the time they figure out what's going on, it's monkey years later.
And Sean can appreciate this. The banks are only there when you don't need them.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
By the time we grew and I didn't really need them anymore, then, oh yeah, we'll cut
Yeah.
you deep.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But up and then it's impossible.
Well, yeah.
It
No,
can't. But
it's
let me
been.
tell you this, and Sean, you speak to this. No bank can ignore a great business plan, right?
That's the case. You would think that's the case.
Not every bank.
Yeah, you would think
Most
that's the
banks.
case. So
you can of worms there, David.
right. There's to be said about what you just said, and what I love about what's going on. You and I, Dave, have had this conversation about the some big beautiful bill, right? We don't need to go into politics about it, but we know that it's all middle-sized companies that can really take advantage of what's going on out there, and that's the exciting part for me today. And you and I are on a weekly call talking about deals. So
Absolutely.
exciting. But listen, you once wrote a check to the government equal to your life's gross income.
Wow.
I remember you telling me about that a couple of years ago. How did that amount reshape your financial strategy?
Well, you know how I respond to all these politicians talking about paying your fair share. I paid 100% of my total life's income. Is
Right.
that fair enough? Obviously a business sale, so it was a lot of money. But at the end of the day, I use that story, if you will, to sort of grab people's that say, if you're not considering a business sale, or if you're considering a business sale, doesn't matter. You should be ready.
Right.
And there's some elements in the QSBS, for example, that if you get ready 2 years in advance, there's a way for you to avoid the pain I had with that check. So things like this that become very, very important. And now that I've left and I've sold my business, I do more private equity, and we live in the margins, right? Any opportunity you can get to make a business more profitable. If
Yeah.
I'm doing an acquisition, the margins are everything.
Right.
The margins of that particular bill, and that thing is, in my opinion, it is written for the love of Main Street. It
Right.
was written for the love of the small business that has been stomped all over for the past couple administrations. And it's just not right. It's the backbone of the country. And GE and Exxon aren't going to keep us afloat. In fact, most employment, I think, what is it, like 80% of the employment in the United States is small business, and the
Oh
rest
yeah,
is, it might be even
yeah,
more than that.
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right.
That must have profoundly impacted how you think about wealth and long-term planning.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
Speaking
Yeah.
of transitions for founders who are approaching a major financial milestone like an exit, what advice would you offer to help them prepare strategically?
Yeah. That common question. I would say, and you've probably heard this on Shark Tank a million times. Know your numbers.
Right.
Mhm.
If you're an owner or a founder, whatever capacity you're in ownership capacity, you had better know the numbers for your business. You better know your gross margin, net margin, your EBITDA. Everything is important there,
Right.
because at the end of the day, let's say somebody walks in from Germany and puts a money on your desk. How do you know that's enough money?
Yeah.
Everything is really a function of your earnings.
Right.
Well, how they're buying the future cash flow success of that business.
Yeah, Dave, it is so to know the numbers, man. It is paramount. And we CEOs and they don't know the numbers and they wonder why they can't get funding and things like that. And so it's very important. But you've got involved with the multifamily stuff, and you decided that it's now time to go into more private, selective investments. What red flags do you look for in deals today?
With the private equity or the real estate?
With the private equity stuff.
Okay. So let me quickly back up on the real estate and just kind of explain to you, I'm now doing more private equity. So a couple of years ago, I was looking for something to do, and I did go to these programs, and I went through the entire program, and pie in the here's how you can make $1 billion in real estate. The typical here about 2 o'clock in the morning on TV. Although it had some value, the problem is that value went when interest rates were 0, 1, 2%, right? There's enough out there to create cash flow and to add value to a real estate portfolio. The problem is all these people that were listening to these programs and staying up at 2 in the morning decided to try their hand at this, and they had no idea how to do proper due diligence. So what they ended up doing is something called compressing the cap rate. The cap rate is the actual income that a business can generate in a
Right.
year.
Right.
And whether it's a conventional business, multifamily apartment complex. And what ended up happening is they were paying too much for the property, and they couldn't service the debt
Yeah.
as the rates started creeping up. And a lot of these people got themselves into some serious hot water. It's kind of like from the GFC. And so I did invest in some syndications, which means I was in a lump investment with a bunch of other people. And those things I'm still waiting for those to to sort of bear fruit. For me, I can wait. It doesn't matter. My money is stored there. But there's some people there, they're savings in this stuff.
Right.
And if they don't see a return, yeah, there's eventually going to be a return. Is it going to be as glorious as they said? Probably not, because the Biden administration took care of that. Everything is coming back. I think that was the purpose of this jobs and tax cuts bill, what we call the OBBB, to sort of Main Street. So long story short, so what was the other option? The other option was, as a former chair of GrowFL, these great businesses of the backbone, the economic Florida, these small businesses that might be struggling and may need some assistance, whether it be financial or management. But they had really numbers and they knew their numbers, right? Or maybe they just shifted off track and they got a little too far off center line.
Right.
There was an opportunity there to invest in those businesses, and the return, think of rent stabilization in a multifamily, can take 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But you can stabilize a business fairly quickly as long as you can raise revenue and increase sales and do all these, the fundamentals. So that's how I moved from multifamily into private equity. And we look at a lot of different businesses every day that like Shark Tank, right? Hey, if I can get somebody in there knows what they're doing, that isn't just there to, throw them a couple $100,000 and get a royalty for whatever they're producing. Those guys, they got 20, 30, 40, 50 portfolio companies that they own a piece of. They can't really spend the kind of time that a private equity firm can. And we're trying to be local. We're trying to be in Florida.
Right.
Florida. So we can spend the time. That's what's required. Got to be on the ground, boots on the ground from a financial and business perspective. So that's why we elected to move into private equity.
Very, very good. Well, the cap rates and interest rate stuff is, I love the way you've honed in on that stuff over the last couple of years, and you've really focused on interest margin going forward, and just been a pleasure of working with you and getting to know you and all of this stuff. And I'm just looking forward to what the future has, and knowing that Florida is a middle market state, right? And so there's so many opportunities, and this bill that was passed is going to help with that. And so, to Roy.
That is predictable, Sean. It's you and I talked about this many times. At the end of the day, if the numbers are good, it's just a math problem. We just got to figure out how to back in to the correct math, right? And it's like a balloon. You squeeze here, it's going to blow up here. You squeeze, so you got that happy middle. You got good sales, you got good marketing, you got good production. If that's the case.
Perfect segue. You kind of hit a little bit on what I was about to ask, but if you can expand it a little more for me and unpack it, looking ahead, trends do you see shaping the future of private equity and real estate investing?
Yeah, I mean, all you do is watch, CNBC or these financial channels. The Fed is not going to start dropping the rates precipitously. They want a controlled recovery. And what happens is, unfortunately, for the small business, that liquidity that's normally would be available to them at lower rates, because banks are willing to lend, they're willing to take a greater risk because they're not making as much on the federal side. Those businesses don't have the same access that a large business that really doesn't need the money, but they'll take it anyway.
Right.
They're getting really great wholesale rates, right? Sean, I'm sure you know all about this, right? I'm borrowing $1 million and I'm borrowing against assets that I have. In other words, I don't pay you. You just take $1 million out of my bank account. My rates are fantastic, right? But if you're a small business that's bootstrapping, they don't have access to the equal cash position that an Exxon does, or GE, or these, Apple, or these huge companies that are publicly traded. They have unlimited access to cash. So what's the relief valve there? The relief valve there is private equity and private cash that is saying, look, we're going to partner with you because we believe in your business. So not only do we believe in that business, we're going to bring money into your business so you can grow. So that now, as partners, we grow together and we both benefit accordingly.
Right.
So I think As much as I would love to see the Fed just
Right.
rates by 100 basis points, you and I both know it's not going to happen, not at least till Powell gets out of there. And even then, they have to be responsible. They can't, the Fed, side note, the best book I've ever read, we're going to talk about books I've read. The best book and the scariest book I've ever read in my entire life is a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin.
Right.
Read that book. It's about the founding of the Fed. It is the scariest and the best book I've ever read.
Right.
So I understand a little better how these things work because of that book. And I would strongly recommend anybody watching this to get it and read that book. But again, this is really where I see the trend for private equity actually being a benefit, because we don't have all the answers, but we're not going to approach a position in a company if we don't know exactly what we're going to do when we get there.
Right.
We're putting up our own money.
Yep. Right. Right.
Yeah, our previous segment, we touched on private equity, how, they're picking up service-related industries
Yeah.
because of that recurring revenue.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
When do you not need your refrigerator repaired, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. Right.
always
Right.
going to have that.
So Dave, we met at GrowFL, and we're still involved. You're a lot more involved than I am. I know you did the judging of the companies of the year a couple of weeks ago. When you were the chair, so what was the one initiative that you are most proud of that got accomplished? And I know there's a couple of things, but tell us about yours.
As you know, Sean, that is a 2-year stint. It's actually a 6-year stint, because
Right.
you're vice chair for 2 years, you're chairman for 2 years, and then you're immediate past chair for 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's a 6-year stint, and I learned a ton. And again, how did I learn? I learned from talking to people like you, talking to other businesses, listening to the problems, coming up with solutions.
Hmm.
In our case, one thing I'm probably most proud of, and it went beyond 2-year chairmanship, and it actually happened 1 week after I handed the gavel over to Pete Previtt, who was my vice chair, and we became a 501c3
Oh
nonprofit.
yeah.
And all the background, all the work for that was done during my chairmanship. So,
Nice.
Don said we started as a state-funded entity. Now, GrowFL is 100% funded by its members.
Right.
It's a organization that exists to educate second stage businesses. And guess what? Exactly what I'm doing now in private equity. Here's
Beautiful.
how you
Yes.
succeed.
Yes. Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
I
a
know that.
perfect segue for me. That's
Yeah.
why I say this. If being the entrepreneur was dropped on my lap,
Hmm.
being a reluctant private equity investor
Right.
was dropped on my lap as well.
Wow. I mean, first of all, congratulations on that. And, everybody's endeavor, at least it should be everybody's endeavor, that, when you get involved in something, always leave it better than it was. And it sounds
That's
from
right.
things that
That's right. That's right.
you did that and beyond more. So kudos to you.
And I'll tell you, typically when you roll off as a chair, right, you kind of take a break and you're not as engaged. And Dave is still very much so engaged and has been engaged. And again, it's just a part of his DNA of being out there to support second stage companies. So
I roll right into Founders Council, and we now have a group of entrepreneurs that have either successfully founded and exited businesses like me, and that access to us is free of charge to GrowFL members. I mean, I can't
Nice.
think of better advertisement than becoming a member of GrowFL.
right.
Right. Perfect segue again. So building on that, how do you approach mentoring second stage CEOs differently from early stage founders, given their unique challenges and growth trajectories?
That's actually an easy answer. GrowFL is only at second stage, so we don't do any startup. You know, and actually, the GrowFL came into being was Tom O'Neill, who was a professor over at UCF, had actually had an incubator at UCF. And some of those companies were growing out of the incubator, and they were moving from startup to second stage, and they had no place to go. So GrowFL was created to help those second stage businesses. And it just so happens that second stage has the greatest contribution to the economic engine of Florida. And I suspect probably most states.
That's right.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So
So
look,
yeah, we do a lot of peer networking and panel networking in general at some of the events. People will
yeah,
come up to me and ask me questions, and I'll ask them questions. So it's a really great organization for peer networking.
right. Well, look,
Amazing.
we've done some stuff, talked about some serious stuff here. We got a few more things to talk about, but let's have a little bit of fun with some quick fire favorites. And what was the most adventurous thing you ever done outside of business?
I thought about this for a long time, and Roy can relate to this. So when I was learning to fly, one of those prerequisite flights to do is your first night flight.
Oh yeah.
And as
With
as
with
pilot
with
in command,
with a
I know this was just my
oh,
first
the
night
first
flight,
night
first
flight.
time
Okay,
flying at night,
I gotcha.
and I was sitting at the end of the runway and to land. My CFI buddy next to me, um, and I'm sitting there, and he's like, "Well, you gonna go?" Nobody on the runway, and I'm going, "I don't know." And all I see is literally what looks like a black curtain. And that night, there was no moonlight that night. It was
Yep.
pitch black.
Woo!
Yep.
Flying off into the darkness
Right.
Yep.
was the scariest thing I ever had to do. And then, of course, after that, after I did it, my favorite time to fly was at night. I don't know about you because it's just so much calmer. You don't get the heat
Yeah.
rising and
Well,
all the bumpiness. And but that was that was intense.
well,
You learn very quickly, Sean, to see and not
see,
and not feel,
got
Yes.
it.
because when you don't have horizon out there, you can become disoriented, where your body actually telling you that you're flying straight and level, but you may actually be in a dive,
Yeah.
and so you rely on your instruments. Yeah, you instrument become the best of buddies all the time, man.
Sounds like it was in my sophomore year when I became an advanced rescue diver, right? And we had to do a night dive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and off the coast Palm
Yes.
Beach at like 80 feet. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, so you rely on those
You don't
instruments.
know what you're
Yeah,
swimming into, right?
that's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah,
right.
I was flying into. I know where the
Yeah.
instruments were. That was about it, Roy.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I can keep myself straight and level.
That's funny.
So
Uh,
speaking of, and rolling on that theme here, what was the surprising lesson, you learned from flying?
the process. I really liked the process. In fact, I liked it so much that I turned it into a sales program. And with QuantumFlo, we had three basic things that we focused on with our salespeople. Because remember, my managers train salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
I had to train my managers to train people. And I used, my for an example, you have the pre-flight. Hey,
Yep.
we're going to go make this call, and here's what we hope to accomplish. You have the flight or the sales call, and then you have the post-flight.
Quite. Yep.
What did we do? Did we check off these things? So it was sort of a great cross-check of your instruments, so to speak, to verify that things get done in an orderly manner. And
Right.
one of my friends and sales consultants says, because what you don't want to do is show up and throw up. That's what he
That's
called.
it.
Right,
You never
right.
you always have a plan. That's probably what I learned.
It's amazing you reference that, because I've used that in my own company. Our current company is we're a cybersecurity firm, and with my people, I often speak about the flight checklist and the different segments of the flight checklist
Yes.
and what they mean. And cybersecurity, we deal a lot with incident response and having an incident response plan. And I use aviation a lot as analogy. And actually, the aviation industry we can learn a lot from, right? And when you look at it, they've nailed down the whole concept of an incident response plan. I mean, before we push back from a gate, even as a
Oh,
passenger,
yeah.
they repeat that in the event that, sudden cabin depressurization, the mask will fall, put it on you first before others, etc. And so in terms of why it's important and why planning for emergency during emergency is the worst time, worst thing to do.
Right, right.
So take it
In
away,
fact,
Sean.
that was my program, Manufacturing Leadership Institute, a few years ago. Sean was my three-pronged
Okay.
flight
why you-
post-flight sales plan.
That's why you be
Nice.
turning your nose up when I invite you to my leadership program events that I be having, right? You're like, I already know
Nope.
this stuff, man.
No checklist. No checklist.
Behind every success story, moments of reflections. Let's dive into lessons you carry with you, Dave. So the most meaningful connection you've made in your career.
That actually is easy too. When I was with QuantumFlo early on, and we were sort of bootstrapping, and every day was an emergency, and we were in the midst of we had started developing this computer software for the machine. I was on it. I was traveling, of course. We were 3 weeks old as a business, and my software engineer left and went to work for a competitor while I was traveling. So I had to come back and I had to learn myself how this software works. Fortunately, I had a gentleman, Ricardo Correras, and Rick, as we called him, was a genius of a man. I mean, graduated top class at MIT. He was an electrical genius. And he took me under his wing, almost like a father. And he encouraged me and said, look, there's ways, you can do it. He was my cheerleader. And I remember one night, and this is a really cool story, that we had a problem where the system kept shutting down for no apparent reason. And I was there, it was like 7, 8 o'clock at night. And I'm standing out there, and literally, this is the days when we had to put a garden hose on the end of this pump system
Hmm.
so we could run water through it because we didn't have a test facility yet. And I had the program up on the computer screen, and I was monitoring the program. I was monitoring the pulses. You can probably appreciate this, Roy. He used a function block technology, right?
Mhm.
And I'm sitting there, and as I was looking at the monitor, the pump shut off arbitrarily, and I saw a red dot on the monitor. And I realized when I traced that back, the on signal for the pump was tied to a soft signal in the variable frequency drive. In other words, it was a computer signal that relied on a Modbus communication to work. And if that communication glitched for a minute, it would stop the pump and reset the timer, and the pump would start again. It would never shut off. So I was excited and giddy as a schoolgirl. I pick up my phone and I explained to him, Rick, I found the problem we've been looking for. And I explained it to him. And he goes, David, you're right. You found the problem. And that's exactly how he said. But no, he was hugely instrumental in just keeping the ball rolling, keeping me encouraged. That was a huge night.
Hmm.
Those few minutes, and definitely Rick is a huge part of my success.
Excellent.
That's awesome. And how do you say? I think we can all reflect back on people who very very instrumental in us being where we are in our careers, and
Right.
and being that motivator, the coach, right,
Right.
to inspire us to
That's right.
see greater
That's
than
right. That's
we
right.
ever even thought we were able to see and
Right.
achieving. So that's amazing.
Yeah, and that base program became the booster operating system software. So
And so, Dave, looking back, if you could change one aspect of your journey, what would it be and why?
yeah, I think we just talked about confidence, right? I think it was I knew deep down I could do it, but I didn't have the confidence to do it. I wasted 7 years of my life at Delta P. And I mean, who knows where we could have gone if I had started QuantumFlo 7 years earlier in 2000.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, just believe in yourself.
Yeah.
When you know that you can do it, just carry that belief. And I didn't believe in myself. And
Right.
that's my fault. I'll live with it. But at the end of the day, it worked out. And that's what I would have done. I would have just started earlier.
Got it. Here's something I'm looking forward to in this conversation. I've enjoyed hearing it again as if it was first time. So I've enjoyed it. Most of it I already knew, but it never gets old, man. It's a phenomenal story. And any books that you've read over the years that had a lasting impression?
Yeah, one of the fortunate things is my travel allowed me a lot of airplane time. And I'm not the kind of guy that loves to just boot up a laptop, like this plane. And I bought a Kindle and I read a lot of books. Some were just entertainment. Some of them were, uh, in my case, my books are business related or financial books. I really enjoyed the book about Steve Jobs, his biography. And I love the way Walter Isaacson writes that book, writes his books in stories, short stories. And then followed up with the Elon book that he wrote just a couple of years ago. And I read that actually on a cruise I was doing. And I remember I was like 3 days into the cruise, and then the book was read. And I'm like, crap, I wish it was longer. I only had this is the only book I brought. So but both those books proved to me one thing. These guys focused on customer user experience, customer experience.
Mhm.
They found their customer. Everything, money didn't matter to them, really. I mean, and you can say time that money didn't matter. They were not really wealthy. They became wealthy as a result of what they did.
Right.
Especially in Elon Musk in the book where he talks about how many times that rocket blew up in the South Pacific when they were trying to launch SpaceX.
Mhm.
So that is a huge one. Of course, my favorite quote is on my wall at QuantumFlo, and it's a Steve Jobs quote. And the quote is, "The journey is the destination." You know,
Wow.
Yes.
and he
Nice.
understands that
Yes.
you can hear without going through the journey, and the
Right.
journey is what builds who you are.
Yep.
That was number one. As far as a business, that was it. You know, for me, that was just inspirational. That would be it. Rocket Fuel was my second book. Rocket Fuel is about, visionary versus integrator. I lucky I had a great integrator at QuantumFlo in my lead engineer who never said no. Right?
Right.
I want you to do this. I never got a no. And then that's what you need for someone. You need that yin and yang. You need
Right.
the guy that
Mhm.
thinks about it, and then the guy that goes out and does it. And he was my do guy. And I changed my third choice. Sorry, Sean, because I really wanted to point out this book because I loved this book, Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance.
Okay.
You can't find a more challenging story if you look. That to me was an inspirational story. So if you ever have a chance to read that book, it's amazing. It's a great deal of respect for that guy.
Right.
It's amazing. You mentioned before Steve Jobs user experience, and we spoke about this in a segment as well. What he did and is still around today and still continues. I mean, Apple, when you like it or dislike their products, they have nailed the user experience,
Right.
the simplification of technology to the point where the least technical person becomes a master on their products.
Yeah.
Well, and they're still living off of his stuff. They haven't
Yep.
really revolutionized anything since, probably '07. I listened to the book on audio a couple of days ago, and they were talking about how he was saying back in '03 that your phone would be the computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was pushing, saying, "Hey, remember
Those phones are as much as a computer now.
Yeah,
right,
it's more some desktop computers that some people have in their
right,
homes. You know,
right." And we had a phone, we had an iPhone, we had the iPod,
Mhm.
which was the
The music. Yeah.
and you had an iPad.
Yep.
You 4 or 5 years ago, you don't see iPads like you used to. You see everyone on their phones. Your phones are a little
Yep.
bit bigger now.
Yep.
The phones
Yep.
were smaller back then. And so again, and so I know the gripes that I've heard from Wall Street about Tim Cook, right? That he's not visionary. He's just Steve Jobs. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
And
right.
I
So
will say this too, Sean. I mean, I don't think, had I not really read that book and really understood what user experience was all about, because I really didn't understand until I read that book, I doubt I would have built the kind of value that we built at QuantumFlo.
right. Yeah.
Literally, even though you wouldn't do this, you could connect that to a pipe. And incidentally, we do pump the Orlando City Soccer Stadium, both the field and the building.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
That's sort of our big, point about all the systems in that building, as well as a bunch in Vegas. But basically, the contractor can install that into a dry pipe. The system will recognize the pipe is dry, fill the system with water, and then automatically go into automatic operation. There is no other product in the world besides the QuantumFlo product that will do that.
Nice.
So that was the value generation that drove the actual buyout, right? They're not just buying your EBITDA, they're
Right.
buying your potential to continue to grow that EBITDA.
Yeah.
And
Well-
you can't do that without pricing power.
Right. No, we're gonna skip around a few things. You've given some incredible information around leadership and on that because this is about leadership. And so, what are three valuable pieces of advice you would give to others based on your experiences?
You already know number one, customer experience is number one,
Right.
always. Number two is watch your bottom line, know your numbers. And then number three, I mean, it's really simple. Customer experience, know your numbers. Don't forget to vacate. Don't forget to reflect and relax.
Right.
Because if you don't, you're going to drive yourself crazy. So those are sort of the big
Got it.
theme I would have.
Customer experience, know your numbers, and don't forget to take some time off to recover.
I call it recovery and reflection.
And
Never
Yeah.
not thinking about your business, but it's tough enough during the day. It's a lot easier on a lanai in Maui.
Right. Things become a
Right.
lot clearer.
a lot clearer.
Absolutely, your brain
Yeah.
opens up.
Yeah.
You'd be
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
Um,
sure you guys know that.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Great. I would say recipe for success there with those three recommendations, and thank you for that. We wrap up here. Let's look ahead. Delve a little bit into legacy and what you hope to leave behind. I mean, QuantumFly Capital is clearly positioned to make a meaningful impact. What kind of influence do you hope it will have on Central Florida's business ecosystem?
Yeah, well, obviously we did talk about our any investments that we make. We don't want to go in there with the intent of making money. We want to go in there with the intent of making better businesses
Right.
and improving businesses and
Right,
creating
right.
jobs and creating revenue and doing all the things that are viewed as positive. I've a family trust and have done the legal things that people do when they have a liquidity event like I did. But I'm not done yet. I mean, again, this is my contribution post manufacturing, well, because I'm still an entrepreneur at heart, but I enjoy uh, building. I enjoy the building part, the development part.
Right.
Once it's developed, okay, now it's on autopilot. So that's probably the things that sort of drive me to get up in the morning that way.
That's right.
Nice.
So I'm gonna enjoy the answer to the question. Your vision for empowering the underserved community through investments.
Well, first of all, let's talk about the obvious choice, which is, people have a job,
Right. That's
they can
right.
live, right? And
That's right.
they're
That's right.
served.
That's
And
right.
if they have a good job,
That's
you
right.
know, our rate of pay at QuantumFlo was higher than most Stanford
Hmm.
because we trained our people to be
That's right.
skilled and they enjoyed their job and they produced. And as a result, everybody won. They won and we won.
Right.
Each year during the Christmas holidays, we would always set aside a large fund where we would distribute it to local charities, which were important to me.
Right.
For a time, we would donate to charities far flung, and we realized that all that money wasn't getting to the people that could
Hmm.
benefit from it. So we started searching for local charities. Race Families was one of them. Can't remember the lady's name, but it was Carol or but we did a lot with them. But wanted to impact our local community because that's where our employees were. So yeah, that was really important to give back in that way.
Nice and perfect segue here as we round the top something here that I ask every one of our guests, and each would say guest has sort of raised the bar for this one coming in.
Right.
But
Oh boy.
if you could build a dream team of advisors, past or present, who would you want at the table to help you guide that mission?
Well, you obviously know who the first one is. That would be Jobs. The guy was a sales and marketing genius. And more importantly, he was a customer experience genius. And if you read the book, if you do get around to reading that book, I mean, he was a tyrant because he was so focused on that sometimes he abused his employees. So not from that perspective, but from just the sheer laser focus
Yeah.
of what he wanted from his people. And I'm from a genius perspective, it's got to be Elon. And
Mhm.
this has nothing to do with the fact that I read the books. I read the books because those people impacted me before I read the book. I
Right.
read the book because I wanted to learn more about
Right.
these people. So from sales, we got sales, we've got the genius in the room. And then this one was, I mean, this is one of the hardest questions you gave me. And all I could think of was strategy. And when I
Right.
think strategy, I think Napoleon, right? Is the most
Right.
gifted,
Right.
strategist probably in the last 500 years.
Right.
And I have some French Canadian in me, so I got a lot of French
Yes.
Canadian.
Yes.
Well, so you got for customer experience nailed down. We got the genius in the room with Musk. So customer experience jobs, genius in the room with Musk. And for strategy, we have
Napoleon
Monsieur
Bonaparte.
Phil
Napoleon
Bonaparte.
Bonaparte. Bonaparte. Très bien, monsieur. Très bien. Très bien. So I would say that, Sean, we'd have to put this one at the top of our list of
Yeah,
boards there too,
absolutely.
man. This
No
is
doubt.
This is fun, guys.
Yeah.
Very much.
no.
It's
David.
amazing that there's very little overlap on these boards of advisors, right? We've
Yeah.
done,
Yeah.
and you had yours before I joined the podcast, Roy. The last 4 podcasts, they're all there's one. Steve Jobs was the
Steve
only
Jobs,
one.
Steve Jobs. And I think Elon. I think we had Elon on there on
Okay.
somebody's.
Got it.
Interesting. Well, David, first of all, it's been incredible.
Yeah.
And what a journey. And I said before that I was in a movie, in a very interesting one, and I should have said a biography, because it's truly just sitting here listening to the different challenges that you've gone through, but more so your, I would say, drive each time adversity faced you in the face, or that you face adversity, how you pivoted and just created opportunity from it after opportunity.
That's right.
Amazing,
That's right.
amazing
That's
story. And I know that some of our listeners would want to get in touch with you and follow your work. How can listeners connect with you?
The website for the private equity is QuantumFly Capital, CAPITAL.com. You can get a little more information on what we're doing. You will notice when you go to that site that we're moving from a real estate syndication to a private equity. If you want to have some fun and watch somebody try to fly an airplane, I started my QuantumFly channel at QuantumFly when I learned to fly, and that sort of evolved into that's moved from learning to fly to some flying adventures to travel that my wife and I have done all over the world. And now I think it's going to evolve again into travel and finance, and how we look at companies and what sort of grow your business and develop your value as a company, your pricing power. That's something that people want to see.
Fantastic, Dave. Everything I thought it would be and more. Your story is powerful, man, and it reminds us of how resilience and strategic thinking can shape businesses and entire industries. So thank you for the time. I appreciate it, and I can't wait to share it to the public, man.
It's been a pleasure, guys, and I've really enjoyed the banter, and you really challenged me a couple of times there.
Yeah, well, absolutely, David. I share with Sean your insights on entrepreneurship, innovation, staying grounded through family and mentorship really resonated. And we know that our listeners will take away a lot from the conversation, especially, as I said before, the power of resiliency and reinvention and building a lasting legacy. So kudos to you. Thank you for being here. Sean?
Yeah, and to our audience. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in to this editions of the Dynamic Business Leader podcast.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who would benefit from David's story.
That's right. And until next time, stay curious, stay driven, and keep leading with purpose. Woo, love that. Purpose.
Love it.
Amen.
Hi, I'm Roy Richardson, host of the Dynamic Business Leaders podcast. Are you a business owner or a leader of a successful business? If yes, we'd love to have you as a guest on our program. Our goal is simple. We provide a platform for leaders to share their experiences to benefit others. We want to hear your story, how you got started, the challenges you faced along the way, and your passion today. If this sounds like you or you know someone who fits these criteria, then be sure to get in touch with us by visiting our website linked in the episode description below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the notification bell to be notified when our next episode goes live. Or, if you'd rather listen to us during your car rides, you can also follow us on your favorite audio channel using your podcatcher. Thanks again, and remember, keep crushing it.